right, I'm waiting to see. This should flip over on my thing too, right?
Yeah. You're live though.
I'm live because I can't see me. It says trailer. This is.
Refresh.
Well, I'll just say this. Can you guys hear me? There we go.
Wait,
All right.
turn that down.
Turn what down?
Your iPad.
Because I can't see me. It says trailer. This is. Well, I'll just say this. Can you guys hear me? There we go. All right, we good now?
Yep.
Everything testing good?
Everybody says video's good.
Video's good, audio good. I'm looking through these things here. Video good, audio good. All right, cool. Let's find some questions and we'll kind of start from here. The reason I'm doing this, guys, is we've been doing the table talk for a while, and we have the super chat set on and the lives set when we run these, but I'm not able to see the questions and I'm not able to answer all the questions. So I want to do this every now and again to be able to take care of those people that are sending in the super chats, because, you know, they're supporting us and I really need to be supporting them. So anyone that sends the super chats in, obviously I'm going to prioritize those and go from there, and then just go with the Q&As as we roll through this. I am solo, so it's just me, so we'll go there. How much was the nacho fund? It didn't pay for the nachos. Let's just tell me that. I'll just say that. I think the nachos and the dips were about 80 bucks. I think the nacho fund was like 24 bucks. So the nacho fund didn't really go over that well. The video's good. What's up, Dave? Would love to see you training and super training. I actually have a text that I'm still waiting to reply for them on. We were talking about trying to go out there and get a date together. I got a couple things in the fall that I'm waiting to hear back on before I get back with them for sure. So that kind of is in the works. All right, let's find a question here, because right now we got no questions. So I'm just going to sit here and look like an idiot. There's no such thing as a just Dave. Okay, yeah. Having so much fun working with you guys. I got no questions. All right, how would you recommend peaking tapering for a meet with conjugate method? I'm 2 months out, and this will be the first meet I've done since training conjugate a year ago. There's a lot of ways you can peak for a meet if you're using a conjugate method. The easiest way that I'm going to say, or I'm going to advise, is you're going to be working your squat in waves, I assume, and your bench may be a flat wave, which actually isn't a wave, it's just a flat cycle, or it's going to be a wave. So I like to personally use 3-week waves. Some people use 4, some week 5. If you want to peak for a meet, the easiest way to do that is just to repeat, is to go through your final wave, and then 2 weeks out from the meet will be week 1 repeated, and then there'll be a deload, and then you go in from there. So that's the easiest way to do that. That's not taking into account circumax, chains, bands, and all the other stuff. So it's really simple to do. All right, so living the new content. Can you touch on the void? I guess it's kind of different for everybody, right? So for those that don't know, the void is kind of like that mental state that you go into if it's a challenge set, or for me it's a heavy single. It's kind of that point in time when you disconnect from you, I guess. And it's kind of hard to explain. To me, it's the best thing in the world. So I don't know really where to go from there. I got to be in the right mood to talk about that, though. But I'll repost the video that we did on my Instagram, because I need something to post once a week. So I'll put that up there so you guys can go there and see that. Can the incline bench increase your flat bench press? Most definitely. I think you're going to have, I've always seen with myself and with people I've worked with, the close grip incline bench, pretty much either a knuckle away or thumb away from the smooth is going to be the best part for that, or the best way to be able to do that, because it's increasing the the tricep strength more. So basically what happens on an incline is you're going to remove the lats a little bit, so it's going to put more emphasis on the triceps. So yes, the incline bench most definitely can help your bench press. Massive fan from the UK and we're doing the content. Why is there so much speed deadlifting and not so much max effort? I think what you're talking about is from the training program perspective, and that's not always the case, but in a lot of the programs I put out there and a lot of the content I put out there, that is, main reason for that is for most people, unless they're built to deadlift, the deadlift is extremely taxing. The other thing with the deadlift is most people like to they like to fuck it up. So the speed deadlift is more a technical deadlift to just reinforce the pattern of the deadlift to be able to work on the starting position. Because the biggest thing with the deadlift is how you start it, where your hips are, where your shoulders are, how your body is aligned from that. So that's another reason why I don't like high rep deadlift sets per se, because the first rep is the only one that really matters if you're training to increase the strength of your deadlift. For most people, the second, third, and all following reps after the first one are usually a little bit better because the hip position changes a little bit just by the nature of how you do the reps. And that's great. You know, it's kind of reinforcing that technique, but it doesn't matter if you can't start that way. What is your advice for a 27-year-old, 6'6", 285 guy with a hip replacement in terms of building squat and deadlift mobility? Right now I'm learning the squat and barefoot shoes and trying to build ankle mobility. I don't know where you are as far as, you know, the surgery per se from that. I personally like to stay on a box with the squats, and with a hip replacement, I don't know what your objective is here. So I'm not a big fan of going lower than 90 degrees with box squat if somebody has a hip replacement. The reason for that is what I'm trying to avoid is the worst case scenario, which would be you go below parallel and your knee shifts in for some reason, which is not good no matter what the case is, but it's even more not good if you have a hip replacement. So the mobility, you're only going to get so much mobility from that squat if you're training the squat heavy on a box that's going to be parallel or a little bit above. So from the heavy strength training perspective, parallel to high box, and then you can kind of go whatever stance that you want. You can build the strength up there. From the mobility perspective, I would go with a secondary type of squat movement. I like to use the tsunami bar. It could just be a high bar. It doesn't really matter. On this one, you're going to bring the stance in closer. You're going to squat much, much lower. Actually, you're going to go down as far as you possibly can without having the back tuck under or butt wink, whatever you want to be able to call that. So you're going to keep, you know, the form intact, go as low as you possibly can, come back up, keep the weight light. On that, I don't think I've ever gone higher than 2 or 3 plates, you know, post-surgery for that, because I'm not concerned with how much weight you can do on that. I'm concerned with the movement and the quality of the reps from that. So I look at the squat post hip replacement 2 different ways. I look at it from the strength building way, which is going to be on a box that's parallel or higher, and then I look at it from the mobility way, which is going to be some type of high bar with a closer stance. It could be a front squat, it could be, you know, any other bar squat, but just the different stance. And then that one will be without the box, but the focus is not going to be on the weight, but the rep quality. Bands are changed if you could choose only one to add in training. I don't have to choose from only one. I would say chains on the squat and bands on the bench. The reason being is the bands on the squat, from what I've seen with other people that aren't more advanced powerlifters, is it grounds them. So it's almost like, it's like teaching them to squat on rails, which is kind of what I want, but what happens when you take the bands off, they lose that technique. So again, it's going to depend upon how much band that's going to be on there. That doesn't seem to be so much the case with the bench. So I see application for both. For anybody that doesn't have intermediate or above experience, I don't know how much I would really use either. The only reason I like to throw chains in for lower intermediate to beginners is because they like it, because it's chains and they rattle and they make the noise and it adds a training effect that they're typically not used to, so it makes it a little bit more fun. It also helps to teach them the compensatory acceleration. I'm not saying bands are not worthwhile, they are. I've also used them a lot for beginners to teach them how to stay tight and how to stand up with compensatory acceleration, or how to stand up with force. So everything's got its place. These questions, when I look at them, they hit my mind, and it's like, are we talking about a beginner, or are we talking about an advanced? Because it shifts. That was kind of a shitty answer, man. I'm sorry, Brandon. All right. Hey, Dave, love your content. Did you prefer poly or denim in the bench shirts in your days? The first bench shirt actually started, there were actually no bench shirts. So the first bench shirts were the polyester that you had to pull over your head. They were a pain in the ass. I hated those things. They, the carryover was terrible. It was maybe 20 or 30 pounds, so I just decided not to use it because it was more a pain of an ass than it was worth. And then the denim is what I preferred, and at the time that was the France denim, which was a little bit easier to get used to. When the denim started to get all gangstered up, I couldn't use it for shit. So I can't really say I preferred it because I was never able to really use it effectively to be able to get that much out of it. So I guess what I preferred was whatever I could touch in, which was pretty much a beat up double ply denim, but I didn't get a very big carryover, and that was on me because I didn't take enough time to learn the skill of the shirt. So I can't really speak on that so much. I can say that it goes through phases where the denim was where the biggest carryovers were, then it started to glide into polyester for all brands, and then it started to kind of move back towards denim a little bit. What do I think about the band shirts? It's just another evolution of the band shirt. So, I mean, personally, what do I think? I don't know if that opinion really matters because I'm not competing. It's so for the people that are competing to be able to decide what they think about it. But what I do think is, from what I can tell, it seems like it's a little bit easier groove to learn. I don't think it's going to be, there's still a learning curve with that. I understand where some of the debate is with it, but I think what people forget is when you went from no bench shirts to bench shirts, there was a carryover. And say the carryover is 30 to 40 pounds or whatever it's going to be. And then, so that changes the landscape of the records that are out there substantially, right? And then when you go from that into the double ply and the shirts that were kind of around in the 2000s, early 2000s, now all of a sudden you're talking about records being broke by a couple 100 pounds by the guys that took the time to really learn the groove of the shirt. And you can't just put a shirt on and bench more weight. There's a lot of work and skill that has to go into that, and the training isn't as easy as what people think either, because the overload is very taxing. So you got to figure out when to do the shirt work. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but the point that I'm trying to make is that also broke records by a substantial amount. So all we're seeing with that band shirt is kind of the same thing happening again. So I can't sit here and bitch and say, well, the band shirts are bullshit because people are getting too big of a carryover, when I was part of the group that was getting a 150-pound carryover on shirts that used to get a 30-pound carryover. You see what I mean? That's called a hypocrite. So it's up for the competitors and the federations to figure that all out. It's just kind of part of the game. I keep trying to reach my screen when I got a mouse. Do you have any sort of locator for your equipment or someone interested per se? We don't. We used to years ago. We're in the process of trying to update our site right now, so that might be something that we'll look into adding once we finally get this stupid thing done. What I would suggest is reach out to Matt Goodwin or Nate Harvey. Most of our equipment is obviously sold offline through those guys. And so reach out to them, either if it's on Instagram or through their email that's on our website, and they should be able to put you in touch with some place that's close to you. How long can you how long can you do deadlift 3 times a week with different variations and increase your PR? It depends upon if you're a beginner, probably for a while. I mean, some of these things, if you guys, I don't want to be a dick, man, but if you guys just read your own question, you're answering it yourself. As soon as you can't get better at it, then obviously you're probably doing it too much. You touched base on business training and balance on the Mastonomics podcast. Can you touch base on the struggles with what you and your work-life balance and dealing the transition to those? I don't know what you're really asking. You touch base on business training and balance on the Mastonomics podcast. Can you touch base on the struggles with that in your work life? I don't know if they're other people. I think it depends. I'm kind of at a loss for words here because I don't know what I'm trying to say. We're a small business. There's less than 15 employees in this company. So it's not like I can't delegate all the work that I do off to other people because they all have work to do as well. And we don't have the cash flow and the working capital just to hire a bunch more people. So what I'm trying to say is, we're not to a size yet to where I don't have to work pretty much all the time. So as soon as I wake up, I'm checking emails, I'm looking at, reports and stats from the website and sales and all that. And that goes all day. It just does, it never stops. It's what my life's been like for 22 years. Yes, it would be great if I had more people to be able to offload some of these things too, but that takes money, and it takes cash to be able to do that. So when you're talking about a work-life balance, I think for me, the balance just worked into it. Where I suppose I get the balance from is most of my work can be done outside of the office. So while I'm in the office quite a bit, I mean, my staff can probably tell you more than I can how much I'm here, but it's not 50 hours a week that I'm here. Most of my work is being done out. So I guess the balance comes from that form is, yes, I'm working a ton of hours, but a lot of the times it's while I'm at home, or wherever I'm at the time. So there is no balance, I guess is what I'm trying to say. If there's a more focused question, I can probably do a better job of answering. Sometimes these things are rough for me to answer because I'm just going right off the hip and I don't have time to think about a lot of the questions before I answer them, which kind of makes it interesting too, right? Hey, Dave, not a question, but a huge fan. Appreciate everything you're doing from the community. Loyally, thank you. I appreciate that. Why didn't any of the Westside guys use a hip grip? I don't know. I've actually thought about that one, and I don't ever remember anybody talking about it, or even maybe we tried it and it was like, fuck, that hurts. That's stupid. We're not doing it. It just wasn't. It wasn't a thing. I don't know. I would say probably ignorance. We just didn't know. I didn't have a grip problem, but my deadlift wasn't strong enough to have one. So I don't know. I don't know. If you don't mind, what factor could have changed which would have prevented the hip replacement surgery? According to the orthopedics that I've spoken to and the ones that have worked on me, my body weight would have been the biggest factor. The biggest factor I could control. Genetics is obviously were the biggest factor because my family history is plagued with arthritis and degenerative bones and hip replacements, shoulder replacements, back surgeries, and all that kind of crap. But I can't control that. The body weight being over 270 for 20 years or whatever it was, I probably could have controlled that. Would I have? No. So other than that, I mean, the training obviously is a factor, but it's a far third factor. So looking back, I don't know what I would have changed from that sense. Actually, there's probably nothing. What I would have done differently is when it did start to become problematic, I would have not gone down the path of all the mobility stuff I was doing. I would have had it looked at first to realize that it was bone on bone, and that the more repetition of movement I was doing was just wearing it away faster. Instead, I made a false assumption, and based upon people I was seeing in myself as well. So I'm to blame with that. I made a false assumption that it was just because I was tight, hip flexors were tight, and that it was things other than what it really was. So that would be the thing that I would have done differently, is when things started to get problematic, I would have started to get x-rays and MRIs sooner, because I probably could have bought a few more years before that had I not done all the mobility shit I was doing. Do you all sell any live, learn, pass on posters? We don't at the time. I've been thinking about it. The issue that we've had with posters before in the past is when we print them up, there's a minimum quantity that you need to print, and then we sell like 20, and I'm sitting on like 200, and it takes me 5 years to be able to break even on it. So we just kind of go in the hole with those things. So we're looking at different options moving forward with some of those things as well. Banners are another thing. Any advice for somebody? Thanks for the super chats, guys. The super chats do help. They help tremendously. The super chats also let me know if this is the type of content you want to see more of. For instance, when this live is over, we'll look at the super chats, we'll look at the comments, we're going to look at the views, we're going to look at the analytics, because as I said before, we're going to put our time and energy into content that you guys really want and that you guys want to support. And there's only so many ways that we can see what you guys want and what you want to support. And these are the metrics that we have, so the comments are huge. The likes are huge. And the notifications, do they even matter, Jacob? Like if they hit notifications, does that even matter?
Yeah.
All right. So all that stuff matters. If you share it, it matters, especially with the podcast, because the podcast is super expensive to do. People don't understand the logistics behind that. I'm not going to get into all of that either. But if everybody just shared the podcast with one person, it would make it a hell of a lot more digestible for me, the guy that has to look at all the analytics of this, because every month you have to go through and look at the staff hours that you put into each piece of content and then justify, is this really worth it, and how can is it leading to sales and all these other kind of things. And the podcast by far is the biggest piece of content, the most expensive piece of content that we're putting out there right now. So the future of that really depends upon you guys and your help with sharing it, and all the other stuff that you're supposed to do with that. So we're still going to keep doing it. It's just the frequency is what we have to base on the analytics. The same thing with these lives and stuff like that. Have you ever considered having Matt Wenning on a podcast? Yeah, we were texting back and forth early in the year before we started the podcast back up again. I haven't got back with him, honestly, because we're still kind of tap dancing around what we're going to do with the podcast, what the frequency is going to be, and to be frank, if we're going to continue doing it at all. So I don't want to start sending invites out to a whole lot of people if we end up, changing the format or having to pull the plug on it. So we're still kind of experimenting with that. Again, your comments help, your suggestions help. All those things help tremendously. I think with the podcast, the reviews are another thing that we need bad, because that helps. So it is what it is. Thank you so much, Ryan. The Bench Monster Canelli expressed interest in having you on the show. Is something you might be interested in. Anybody can say yes. I mean, I'm doing more podcasts now than I have in the past year. I reactivated my Instagram pretty much just for the DMs and stuff like that. So if he can DM me, I'd probably be interested in doing his. I like him. He's got a good story. I love listening to these. Thanks. I asked a question further up, but it was too long to cut and paste on here. Okay, so Matt. I'm looking for it.
Been using 531 4-day split on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday split. Just bought powerbuilding Unity program and plan on staying MWF even though it is a 5-day split. What are your thoughts on this?
That's okay. it's fine. It's fine. I want to say it's not optimal, but it's okay. I mean, if you're doing that, it's going to make, I think if my math is right in my head, it's probably going to take that from a 9-week program, probably to around a 12. And that's fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. You know, it's just going to add more recovery. It wouldn't definitely, it's fine. I don't want to get long-winded on some of these things. Last table talk, you said context matters for the warm-up. If it's a power lifter, average student athlete, why do you say that? Can you explain? The context matters because if it depends what they're going to be doing. So what are you trying to warm up is the biggest question. So if it's a power lifter, they're pretty much working on one plane. So they're going to be hitting that plane much harder than what a bodybuilder would, for instance. So the things, certain areas need to be warmed up and activated, or whatever you want to call it, more than others. The hips for one, you know, the low back for one, shoulder stability, those things far more than what it's going to be if it's a bodybuilder that's doing multiple plane movements in one training session. You know, if it's an athlete, and the level that they're at as well is going to matter too, because if it's a beginner and they're not, say if it's a squat, right? Somebody's working up to a 500-pound work sets is going to be different than somebody that's working up to 230-pound work sets. So how much warm-up is going to matter, it's going to change depending based upon the person. So the real answer to that is it really depends on the individual and what they need to do, because too much warm-up can be a bad thing too. So there's a balance with that. I think the key takeaway with that is if you're strictly talking warming up, that's what you're doing. You're just warming up. Warming up means getting ready for the work that you're supposed to do. I understand that a lot of people are starting to use the warm-up to put in, you know, accessory movements, activation movements, post-rehab movements, rehab movements, you know, all those type of things, and that's fine. Generally, I like to have those things towards the end of a training session because I'm not a big fan of doing anything to kind of fatigue stabilizers before you're going to do a main movement. So that's where I think things get a little convoluted and where context matters, because you got to know what the base of the program is and what the objective of the program is. Blew my quad off the bone squatting a weight I've done many times. Wish me luck. Surgery on Tuesday. Yeah, I wish you luck, man. That sucks. The thing here is a point I want to make with your comment you threw in here is most of the time when people get hurt, it's not with weights that are maximals. It's usually not with weights that are PRs. It's usually with sometimes it's just with warm-up weight or training weight. So it's not happening because of the strain. It's happening because of accumulated fatigue, accumulated wear and tear, dehydration, a lot of other factors. Most of the injuries that I've had, you know, over my whole span were exactly that. And the takeaway from that is we all still fuck it up. Like we all still take our eye off that, because you start feeling good, things start feeling good, and then you start not paying attention to those little things as much as you normally would, or you're not paying attention to bracing as you normally would, or just grounding as you normally would because of that. And then what happens is those little things just out of nowhere just pow, you know, just come and kick you right in the dick, which sucks. And I feel for you, but you know, my advice is to learn from it, and then as you come back, be more cognizant of it, but understand that everybody still fucks it up. You just need to figure out how to fuck it up less. Joe Sullivan posted, wraps are not raw. Your thoughts? I don't know. Like why is that? The reason that my thoughts, I guess, were that kind of depends upon the federation, right? I mean, if you just want to create drama and conflict, then yeah, I mean, anybody can debate that. You're going to have people on both sides. Even with multiply, you're going to have people on all sides. And the thing when you have, you know, debates like this, you're going to have people on all sides, but very rarely does anybody not have a bias to the way that they do things. So the multiply people are going to say, well, yeah, that's the best test of strength. The totally raw people are going to say, no, that's the test of strength. The rap people are going to say, well, no, that's everybody's going to be biased to what they do. Nobody's ever going to, the multiply guy's never going to come out and say, yeah, sleeves are by far the strongest way to compete. The rap guy's never going to say multiply is the best way to compete. So it's kind of it's good for, I guess it's a good way to like get people riled up that actually care about it, but it doesn't matter because it's the federations determine how you're going to compete. So it's just different ways to compete. So I don't have thoughts on it because it doesn't really make any difference because it's kind of out of your control, I suppose. You can compete however you want to compete. I'm going to support the way anybody wants to compete. And nobody's better than the others.
We also we missed the super chat from earlier.
Yeah.
Y893. Is there any way for people to visit the facility, or are there any plans on seminars in the future?
Any way for people to visit the facility or any plans on seminars in the future? There's no plans right now. Our office hours are 9 to 5, so people can visit there. As far as training, it's a private gym, so that's kind of how I'm going to keep it for right now. I do still do some consulting here and there, so there is that. But that's really all we got going on. I don't have any seminars planned at this time. Super chats, thanking, and I appreciate it a lot. So anytime those come in, I appreciate it. It helps, like I said earlier, for us to know what type of content to keep doing, what you're looking for, and so forth. Is speed work without bands or chains a waste of time? Absolutely not. Speed work, all types of speed work is effective, right? So I'm choosing my words correctly. So effective for what? Effective for people that need to work on, technique for one thing, effective for people that need to work on compensatory acceleration for another thing. So there's you don't want to fall into the camp that speed work is worthless if you don't have bands and chains, because that's not true. Bands and chains can help with the speed work. It can help with the speed work tremendously, but it's not everything with that. Difference between black, blue, red box squat pads. Okay, so the pads that we have, the blue ones compress, so they're vented. So the reason why we went with that is years ago, and people still may do it now, they squat on foam. They squat on foam blocks. And that's just kind of gross to me, right? Because you get, swamp ass people squatting on foam, and then foam's just a big sponge. So you get this gross swamp ass people squatting on this, then all their swamp ass germs get in this foam sponge that's going to hang around. It's just fucking gross. So what I wanted to do is to create a pad that's going to do the same thing, that's got, the Naugahyde vinyl that you can actually fucking clean, so you don't have to like sit on other people's swamp ass. So that's the blue ones. The black ones are just, they're solid. So they're just, and the other ones are just shorter. So they're, well, not solid, it's foam, but there's very, very little compression with the black ones that are 4-inch, or the 2-inch ones, which for us here is the red and the green, I believe. In your personal opinion, how risky on my biceps would it be for a deadlift post elbow fracture? I can't fully lock out. I would wait until you have full range of motion in the joint before you start deadlifting. You could use very light deadlifts as a way of loaded stretching, as long as you're close to the full range of motion. Now, I probably still wouldn't advise it unless you're already at full range of motion. So post-injury on anything should require regaining full range of motion and mobility, movement, so forth, before you start doing any type of heavy strength work, at least for that joint. All right, did I miss any super chats?
Eli Henderson asked a question below his super chat. I don't know why the text didn't send, but I sent a second.
Oh, favorite Waylon hat. All right, you see my hat. So favorite Waylon Jennings song, I've always been crazy, hands down.
No. Sorry, strongman events into conjugate, do you add in an event today or an event day, or do you use accessory work? If so, what day? Would love to see more strongman content.
Strongman content, if you're running conjugate, how to put it in there, where the event training would go. Personally, I've not worked with many strongmen outside of just consulting and advice, so I can't give definitive answers one way or another. The advice I give them is to treat the strongman event training the same way a strength coach would treat the training that the football players are doing on the field or a shot putter is doing with the practicing of the shot put, while keeping in mind what that training load is going to do to the training. So what does that mean? Does that mean having an event day? It could be. It depends what the event is and how specific the event is to the actual training that's going to be done for that day. So things like, for instance, things like carries, right? That might be more inclined to be its own day because that would fall under GPP, or what I would call super GPP, while a log press would fall more into the weight training domain of the log press, if that helps. So some of these events, if you look at what the events are, some of them do kind of lend themselves more to max effort type training. Thus, it could fit in as that max effort exercise. Some of the events fall into more dynamic type training. So it would fall into there. Some of it fall into more repetition-based training, and some of it fall into more GPP-based training. So throughout the whole training cycle, that's kind of how it would be presented in there. But there's still going to have to be days to where multiple events are going to be in there, because there's got to be some specificity to how it's going to be done in the competition. When taking your last heavy singles before a meet, how far out is optimal? Again, this context matters. So the more advanced the person, the further out it's going to be. So if it's intermediate or beginner, I would say your last bench, 7 to 10 days. Last squat, 7 to 10 days. Last deadlift, maybe 14 days. If it's a beginner, like very, very beginner, and then you're going to run into some confidence issues to where I don't think it would be optimal, but it may be more beneficial to have them take their last lifts 7 days out from the meet, because you start going further than that, they're going to start wondering if they're going to start thinking they're going to lose all their strength, which is not true. But you gotta address the mental issues with training, as well as the physical and the technical as well. So it depends upon the level and who the person is. When taking your last singles, okay, where we got here, have been a podcast really, I believe JM, Kyler Willem and Dan Green have been on the podcast already. I believe JM was somewhat, I don't know what that really means. Oh, it's a reply to somebody else's. How much carryover do you think working captains a crush regularly has on increasing your double overhand deadlift? Probably zero. You know, it's a different type of grip strength. Deadlift is more of a yielding, holding type of strength more than it is a crushing type of strength. Outside of the SS Yoke bar and trap bar, what specialty bars do you think has the most universal use for Gen Pop? Looking to get a new bar for my training facility. The cambered American press bar I would throw out there as you already listed the other two. The reason for that is, if you look at the number of grips that are on there, say there's 4 grips, then you can flip it upside down. You're going to get 4 more. You can spin it around the other way. So you end up with, what is that? Say like 16, different grips. And that's just on the pressing. You can do the same thing with any type of rowing. So there's multiple exercises or multiple use out of the one bar, which I think is what you're looking at, is for a home gym or limited space facilities, how many uses is the training apparatus going to have, and from a training economy standpoint. So that's going to have more than the other ones off the top of my head. Can anyone, also beginners, use your powerlifting warm-up for powerlifting, or is it specific? They can. I mean, it's just what I put out there for the powerlifting, it's just a general warm-up. It's there for, it's not some gold standard warm-up. It's just there to cover the bases of those lifts that are being trained, especially the squat and the deadlift. Love these Q&As. Thank you. Thanks for the super chats again. Appreciate those. 1 rep max. Okay. Why no knurl on the multi-grip bars? Cost. We can do it, if people want to pay more. And so that's part of it. The other thing with that is I did look into that when we were coming up with it, and the cost was a big factor with that. The other one was it's texture coated. So when it's texture coated and you have a little chalk, you don't need it. So that's enough knurling with the texture coat. Now, if it was not texture coated, it would probably be a different conversation. But the truth of the matter is, it's not like we're selling friggin' hundreds of these things a month either. So to add more cost to it is just going to lower how many we're going to be able to move, which is going to make it even harder for us to continue to keep selling it. So there's that factor that comes into these business decisions as well. There's only a certain price people are going to pay. And right now, the price of freaking everything the price of everything that we sell is going up from our suppliers every week. I get a new price list. Winter technique breakdowns coming. Probably not. I mean, I tried those before, the technique teardowns, a year and a half ago, and they did terrible. So I'm not going to keep doing things that people don't like. Again, going back to what I was talking about before, the comments, the likes, all those things, the views, all those go into helping us determine what content you guys want. And that's what we're going to continue doing. But if the content isn't giving us the analytics to show this what you're looking for, we're not going to keep doing it. So I think the technique teardown was one. I think there was like a Friday thing, like a Friday exercise choice or something like that. They just didn't do well. So I don't want to say they're never going to come back, but it was a lot of work to go into something that nobody really cared that much about. Can't find a plug for gear. It's illegal here. Can you tell me how to? No. What the fuck are you talking about, dude? All prices of everything going up. Yeah, pretty much. We're trying to keep in mind it's from a business perspective. Most of the products we sell, we're retail. So we have the suppliers that are given to us, and then we bring it to market. So for a long time, we've been able to absorb the price increases, but it's to a point now we can't absorb them anymore because our margins are just getting pounded. So like I said, about every week, and some things fluctuate, freight, shipping, gas, steel, things like that, they kind of fluctuate. So you just kind of hold, and take the hit, and you kind of see how it levels out. But as soon as our suppliers start implementing price increases to us, in the 22 years I've been in business, I've never had a supplier bring the prices down. Once they go up, they're up for good. So this year, especially the last 6 weeks, it's getting ridiculous. Okay, did I miss any? Keep asking the question, guys. The super chats, again, they help. The comments, leave the comments after this thing is done. This format's kind of easy for us to do, right? So this format's easy for us to do. So let us know what you think about it, because it's just sitting down after I train. My brain's kind of fucked up, but sitting down after I train and going from there. Find a program you actually enjoy and stick to it. I don't know what the question was here, but I do like the answer that this person's giving, which is find a program that you enjoy and stick to it. That's huge. That is absolutely huge. All right, so let's scroll back up here. If you guys like this, I don't know if it makes any difference or not, hit the thumbs up. That will help too. So like if you're on here right now and you like what we're doing, click the stupid thumb up thing, and that will let us know. Is it hard? It's hard listening to you talk about how hard things are. You guys provide the best content on YouTube and you barely get any views. Well, yeah, then fucking tell other people to watch our videos. It's hard to make the content and see the shitty fucking views some of these things have. So it is. I mean, it is what it is. I'm not going to sit here and bitch about it. We just keep changing the content and keep coming up with stuff until we find things that people like. So it's not so much bitching as it is trying to figure out what people are looking for. Is the Unity power building program healthy to do on a calorie deficit? Thoughts on adjusting training around? Yes, it is. The max effort stuff is, I'm using the word max effort in that program a little out of context because it's not really, I would better define it as modified max effort. So yeah, yes, it would be good with that because it's not super strenuous. There are some training sessions in there that are brutal though. So that just kind of comes along with the training. So no problem with that. Actually, I was going to have John out to do kind of a power building live Q&A today, which is kind of how this thing happened because we had to reschedule that for next week. So we'll have John out next week. I think it's Wednesday, right? Yep. To do a live to where we'll address a lot of the things with the power building program and just other questions that you guys have in regards to trying to implement powerlifting principles with bodybuilding type training. The biggest takeaway that you need to understand with that is it's not a powerlifting program and it's not a bodybuilding program. So don't expect to get those type of results from something that's going to be a hybrid. Do you still program who prepares somebody for lifting and build glutes, low back, GPP first before they get under a barbell, like the one that you wrote for Traci when you talked about it in the 20? No, I don't think we do, but we probably have dozens of articles about that. So if you just search Elite FTS GPP training program, you're probably going to find a lot of articles about that. There's like 5,000, no, there's more than that. I think we have 7,000 or 8,000 total articles that are archived on our site. So pretty much everything's covered. Do you know anyone that's been able to box squat after a knee replacement? Yes, tons of people. I believe, I'm terrible with the names. I believe Vlad, who I think still has the all-time highest raw squat. I think the reason I say that is I think Dan Bell broke it, but I don't understand that because the squat was under what Vlad did. So I don't know how that is, but anyhow, yes, there's been multiple people that I know that have come back and exclusively just used box squats after a knee replacement. Are you still doing form reviews? No, I'm not during the DMs. Last year on Elite FTS website, there was a power rack that was almost identical to the power rack you guys used in the Demorest trim. Will it be for sale again in the future? I think you're talking about the 2x2 power rack. I don't think so. I think we discontinued that just simply because we weren't selling them. So we didn't want to keep bringing in and gauge steel or the 2x2 steel if we're not using it for anything. Would you ever do a YouTube video of someone doing the perfect birthday workout you made up years ago in a separate video? Made me laugh. I don't remember what you're talking about. This is going to show my age. My brain's going dead. I have to search this later. The perfect birthday workout. Thanks again for these people that are sending the super chats in. Ever thought of running an Elite FTS subscription forum similar to one? We've talked about it. We're talking about it now as well. So yeah, we've thought about it. You know, how to implement it. It's kind of another question. But it would be great if you can make programming content that can be used for other sports. There is, I'm going to default back on it here too, because maybe people just don't know. We have articles on the site that have programs for pretty much every sport possible. So it's a lot of these things that you guys are asking for, we already have on our site. So you got to remember, we've been putting content out since 1998. So search Elite FTS and whatever topic you're looking for, and it's probably going to pull the articles and the programs that you want. We have a whole article category. for programs. Now, granted, our site kind of sucks as far as how to find these articles, but we're in the process of updating and changing that as we speak. So if for some reason the site goes down later today, it's because we're migrating into the other site. 100% would get a membership for paid content. I appreciate that. You know, what I've seen with other people, friends of mine, with these type of things, and which goes into the decision making here, is you get a lot of people that say that they're going to do it, and then you put all the investment and capital into it, and then you launch it, and then they don't do it. So you end up with another expense that's not even breaking even. So, you know, a lot of these things and a lot of these decisions that we're going into, if it's, you know, a paid program that's going to be on a paid site or a paid website or paid podcast or whatever it is, you know, a lot of what goes into that, at least when I'm looking at it from the person that, you know, co-runs the company, is if we can't get people to give us super chats on a live Q&A, then how in the fuck are we going to be able to sell a program or a supplemental website to Elite FTS? So that kind of what plays into there is, I don't want to get into all that business shit. Nobody really cares about that. Not sure if this is appropriate for a live chat. You may cover this before, but have you ever had any crazy, wacky health markers from being over 275? Yeah. I don't know if it was from what you're specifically talking about, but it was when I was pushing the weight harder, really hard. I guess you're saying over 275. So when I was trying to push hard into 305, 310, everything got fucked up. So, and that the issue with that wasn't, I didn't really care that things were getting screwed up health-wise, you know, cholesterol, hemoglobin, all those type of things. I really didn't care about that, but the issue that I cared about is my recovery was for shit. So that kind of went and coincided with that. So those health markers, though, are something that I typically check at least twice a year and have since 2000, right around there. You know, my doctor is pretty adamant about following those markers. So Dan Bell's squat was full power and Vlad's a squat only, which is why, okay, that makes sense. I get that. That makes sense.
I think we missed a super chat.
Okay.
Winchester 300 Cox.
Okay. What is it?
It's best bar that Elite FTS sells, in your opinion?
The yoke bar. The SS Yoke bar. I talked about that a little bit on the Massonomics podcast that I did last week. The reason for that is just the time it took to develop and the reason why it was developed. The yoke bar was, I can't hold a squat bar anymore because my shoulder needs replaced, which is another story for another time. So this has been that way since 2004. So the issues that I ran into with a safety squat bar was because the pad is not long, it's not wide, it's a short pad. The compression on the spine made it very, very hard to use the bar long term. I could use it for short bursts, but I couldn't use it for long term. And when it's really all I had at the time to squat with, this is before a spider bar, to be able to rotate that in with that. It's all I had, so it became problematic. So I wanted the bar pad to be wider, so the weight would be displaced across my whole upper back. So that was kind of how the whole process started. And then from there, it was, now that the pad's wider, how do we get the pad so it compresses in the right spots but doesn't compress in the other, which is why we got two different layers of foam that are in the pad. It's why the pad is also one of the most expensive, not the most expensive, but it's more expensive than people think. It's not a swimming noodle that's on there. So it's not, you know, the pad is a motherfucker. Let's just put it that way. It's hard to get made. It's hard to get made consistently. It's expensive. So there's all those other things with that. And then once we had that all done, it had to be able to hold the weight that we were talking about. And I have to find the video. We had this guy that we called Little Stevie, who was not little. He's like 320 pounds, like 6'5". So the way that we would test these bars, we put 5 550, 600 on it, have him stand up with it in a power rack or the monolift and just throw it off his back and let it fall onto the safety pins at the bottom and see if the bar would bend or break. Or now there's ways to do load testing with these things that are not as fun as what this is, but I was more concerned with what's going to happen if somebody was to do, say, a suspended good morning off of chains, or they were to do some type of, eccentric work in a power rack or anything that's going to smack the bar into the pins. I wanted to know and be assured that this bar is not going to break, because think of what would happen if you got the pad and your head between these pads and the bar comes down and boom, half the one side of the bar snaps and the bar tips to the side. You're going to rip your fucking head off. So that was part of the process as well. I have the videos of that. I have to find those videos, because we destroyed some power racks, or not the power racks, but the spot pins in the process. And we broke a lot of bars as well.
We got one more super chat from Geo Power 50.
Yes.
It is, without regurgitating cues or just train hard, what is your favorite 1 or 2 bench cues to think about?
Press. Cues are specific. I'm trying to think of something that's just going to be general. Drive your back in the pad, I suppose, or just staying tight. Another one would be a big one. If the person's training for maximal strength and they're training to increase their bench press, learn how to take the bar out and just hold it for a couple seconds before you lower it. That way you can let everything kind of ground into the bench. That would be a big one. So sometimes you'll hear lifters tell other ones, hold, 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 hold. That's probably a big one. We built some of this into the power building program, our power builder program with Meadows, just exactly for that reason, just to start teaching people how to do that. Post those videos. Took a year off. Would you recommend to go straight back into conjugate program and build up with something for 531? Coming back after a year, I don't care what program you come back with. You just need to come back light and smart. So you can come back conjugate, you can even come back 531, but you're going to have to adjust everything way down. So maybe don't start with, if it calls for 4 sets and you're used to training at 6 or 7 effort capacity, just do a couple sets and train at 3. Take your time coming back. No question, just love listening to these. Matt, thank you. Appreciate it tremendously.
I think we missed one more from Helmut Krusman. How to modify your warm-up without machines?
How to modify your warm-up without machines? Why are you warming up with machines? I want to flip the question around the other way and say, what is your machine warm-up? Unless you're talking about using things like treadmills and bikes to help with your warm-up. And if that's how you're warming up, you can walk outside. I don't know if I understand exactly the question. If you can answer it again a different way, that would help. If you could only, here we go with these things. If you could only have 3 exercises with bands or GPP, what would you pick? Love the band progression. Here's the thing with questions like this. If you have the bands, you don't have to limit yourself to 3 exercises. The difference between 3 exercises and 5 exercises time-wise is insignificant. So I guess what you're asking, to flip this around, is what 3 exercises with bands do I like the most? That would probably be a better question. I would say band push downs, band pull aparts, and band good mornings. Advice for training with shoulder impingement. Follow up with a physical therapist or somebody qualified with this. The advice I'm going to give you is coming from somebody that needs a shoulder replacement. So I would say it's kind of more than impinged. It's frozen. So what I try to do is, I know where my limitation is as far as range of motion. I stay within that limitation. And if I ever do want to push it, I only go within 5 degrees. And I have to be very, very aware of what that is. Because for instance, earlier today, I was doing lat pull downs. I let my guard down a little bit. I went a little bit further than I should have with the shoulder, and the weight was light enough that's not that big of a deal. And it can be problematic because, you know, it's getting into a range of motion I really should not go into. So figure out ways to stay out of those ranges of motion that you don't want to go into, that are just grinding the joint harder than what they should. And if you do go into those range of motion, only do it, personally, I'm speaking for myself again, only do it by like 5, maybe 10 degrees at the very most, and very, very light. So just basically loaded stretching without forcing it, and kind of work from there. You know, things like the shoulder saver pad, you know, I'll use if it's really inflamed, if it's beat up, then I'll use that. Fortunately, over the past couple of years, I've been able to increase the range of motion a little bit more to where I was able to touch the bar to my chest when I bench. But when when the weight starts to become over 90%, it becomes too problematic. So I'll put in a one board or shoulder saver pad. So you listen to yourself, I guess is what I'm saying, and listen to the range of motion that you have with that, and have somebody look into it that may be able to help you. If it is bone on bone and it's frozen and so forth, I'm not going to say there's not ways to help it get better. Well, you know, it's just, you might have to figure out how to work around it.
Looks like we missed another one. The question posted separately. How would you walk a customer through buying a GHR versus a 45D back raise? It seems like most of the staff prefer the 45D for their home gyms.
I'm different. I would prefer the glute ham raise because you could do back raises on that too. I think it becomes, for a lot of people, with Jim and those, when they're out here talking the other day with the podcast, space, you know, becomes part of it, you know, and it's also personal preference. So personally, I would recommend the glute ham raise because there's more exercise options with that than you're going to get from the 45-degree back raise. But I got both out here. I got two of each out here. So in regards to warm up, he meant lat pull downs, reverse hypers. I get, okay, that makes sense. So with instead of the lat pull down, if you're going to do the pull down abs, you can use a band. Instead of the reverse hyper, you can use a bent knee bilateral leg raise, so like a bent knee reverse hyper, if you want to say that. But it's really not, because the reverse hyper is the name of a machine, not an exercise. It's patented and trademarked, so you got that. But you can do a bent knee version, just holding on to a normal dumbbell bench to be able to do that as well. Dumb question, what side is correct one to use on the yoke bar? Where should the handles point? Handles should point down. You can use it either way if you want to get into the weeds about that. The most basic way is with the hands point, or the handles pointing down. The logo, the elitefts logo, pointing so people in front of you can see that. The SS Yoke being across the back of the traps. Doubles or fives for dynamic work. Also hand placement when squatting on the giant cambered bar. It can do either for speed work. I've used both in helping people. Triples as well. So 2s, 3s, 5s are fine. You start to get over 5s, it becomes a little bit more problematic to be able to, for people to display the force that we're looking for, but it can be done. You know, some athletes can do that more effectively. You can use things like a tendo unit or anything else to measure force or bar speed to be able to determine how many repetitions they can go before that begins to drop. Also, hand placement when squatting with a giant camber bar. I like the hands to be on the horizontal part closest to the plates. I don't like it to be on the stem, because what I'm trying to do if I'm having somebody use that bar is to take a lot of the upper back out of the movement, to take a lot of the lats out of the movement, and as soon as they grab on the stem, they're flexing their lats, they're flexing their upper back. That's when I'm having them use that bar to take some of that out. So that's where I personally like it to be. There's no definitive right or wrong. It just depends upon the training effect that you're looking for. The shoulder isn't needing replaced. I'm 20 and haven't. All right, if you're 20 and your shoulder's fucked up, find somebody to help you work through this impingement syndrome and get it fixed, because we're not talking the same things. than if you were 45 years old and the shoulder is just trashed and basically done. Any other ones that we missed here through this?
Give me 1 sec to look around. This looks like Aaron Oz did it. So
All right, how long have we been going here?
about an hour.
All right, guys, I'm going to make a last call here for questions. I'll go back through and try to hit some of the ones that are not super chats. Again, we appreciate the super chats. To just reiterate what I've said before, the super chats help us know if this is content that you're looking for, content that you like. The likes help us a lot to determine. The views help, the comments help. You know, if you're listening to this, if we push it through to the podcast, you know, leave a review, share the podcast with somebody. All these things help us to determine which content to double down on and which content to back away from. So your views, your comments, all those things, they matter more than what you guys think they do. Sharing things matter a lot as well. I personally don't like saying this every 15 minutes, so at some point it should just kind of become like known. Are the Elite FTF crates the stiffest wraps you've ever used? Yes, they are. Well, no, there's some that we've gotten that we didn't bring to market because they were twice as strong as what those crates were. So there are stronger ones out there, but are they able to be used is the other question. Peeking into a meet when using conjugate as a raw lifter. We have articles on the website that go deeply into that. So do a search, it'll bring it up for that. What's your biggest criticism of the fitness industry? And what do you think has improved the most? Criticism is too many people are just out to rip other people off, you know, or you can flip it around the other way and say there's too many entrepreneurs that are only focused on making money with not the actual help that they're giving to the people that are out there. That's never changed. That's been the way since day one. It kind of is what it is, to make a stupid statement. That's how it is. And what do you think has improved the most? I don't know. I don't think about that. I just worry about what we do, the content we put out, and if we're given the content that you guys are looking for. I'd rather focus on that than what other people are doing. No question, just love the content you guys do and want to support it. Appreciate that very much. The difference between a box squat and a pin squat, just think about it, right? So if you're going to squat down and that barbell is going to hit the pins, where's that weight deloading to? Right? Because it's going to sit on the pins. So all that tension gets released from your body to where if you went just a ½ inch lower, so you squat down to the pins, but then you just drop a little bit lower, your body, so basically your body comes off the bar. There's no tension on you, right? Now, if you sit down on a box, there's always tension on you. Okay, really enjoyed the podcast. As a new lifter, I watched, appreciate it. All right, guys, I'm going to shut this down. I appreciate you coming out. I appreciate the support. I appreciate the comments, or the questions, I suppose. When this closes down, or if you're listening to this after the live, please leave a comment. Let us know what you think about this, and we will see you probably next Wednesday, right? Yep. For the podcast we'll be doing with John Meadows. Thank you guys again, and I'm out.